In medieval Hungary, two ancient texts sought to answer a key question. Where did the Hungarians come from? The Gesta Hungarorum and Gesta Hunorum et Hungarorum blended history and myth to legitimize Hungary's rule over the Carpathian Basin. But how much was fact and how much was legend? Join us as we explore the origins of Hungarian people and the medieval chroniclers who shaped their identity. Medieval Hungary has two main codices that seek to explain the origins of the Hungarians. These were the first of their kind, aiming to trace the ethnographic history of the Hungarian people and to legitimize their dominance over the Carpathian Basin. The Gesta Hungarorum, or Deeds of the Hungarians, was written around 1200 AD by Anonymous, the notary of King Bela III. The Gesta Hunorum et Hungarorum, or the Deeds of the Huns and the Hungarians, was written between 1282 and 1285 by Simon of Keza, while serving as the notary of King László IV of Hungary. This text is often considered a continuation or a part two of Anonymous's Gesta Hungarorum. Both of these texts blended history and mythology, forming the earliest recorded narratives of Hungarian origins. While they describe pre-Christian Hungarian history, their themes and storytelling are deeply influenced by Christianity. This was a deliberate effort to align Hungary's national identity with Christian Europe and reinforce its legitimacy. Simon of Keza compiled his codex using Hungarian, German, and Italian sources gathered during his travels. His work largely focuses on the shared origins of the Huns and Magyars, a common medieval belief. Western Europeans referred to the Magyars as Ungri, Ungari, or Hungari, a name that closely resembles the Latin for Huns, or Hunni, fueling the mistaken belief that the two peoples were related. In reality, the name Magyar likely traces back to the Onogur Confederation, a Turkic alliance to which the Magyars' ancestors once belonged. Over time, this term passed through Old Slavic and Byzantine sources, eventually evolving into forms like Ongri and Ugri in medieval Latin. Although the Huns and Hungarians were likely unrelated, medieval historians and scholars often conflated various steppe peoples, as European chroniclers had no way to distinguish them clearly. Thus, when Simon of Keza consulted older foreign sources, he encountered references that reinforced the idea of a Hungarian-Hunnic kinship, largely due to linguistic similarities and historical misidentifications. Simon of Keza's codex was not merely a historical account. It was a political and nationalistic narrative designed to legitimize Hungarian rule over the Carpathian Basin. This was done by establishing a direct lineage between the Huns and the Magyars. Simon provided Hungary with a foundational myth, linking its sovereignty and legacy of Attila the Hun. In doing so, he shaped the historical consciousness of medieval Hungary, reinforcing the idea that Hungarian kings, such as the one he served as a notary, were the rightful heirs to this land. This was more than just history. It was the genesis of medieval Hungarian nationalism, in an era where legitimacy was often tied to historical precedent and divine right. Simon's work provided a powerful justification for Hungarian dominance. If the Magyars were truly the successors of the Huns, then their rule over the Carpathian Basin was not only natural, but preordained. The narrative would cement itself in Hungarian identity, shaping the way the nation understood its past and its place in Europe for centuries to come. The narrative Simon weaves begins in ancient Mesopotamia, where Nimrod the giant, the great-grandson of Noah, was king. Fearing another great flood, Nimrod attempted to build a tower that could reach to the heavens, what would become the Tower of Babel. When the project failed, he moved to the land of Evilat, where his wife bore him two sons, Hunor and Magor. These brothers became the forefathers of two great peoples, the Huns and the Magyars respectively. One day while out hunting, Hunor and Magor spotted an enchanted stag. They pursued it relentlessly, until it led them to the Meotis marshes, identified as the lands north of the Azov Sea. Enchanted by the fertile land, the brothers decided to settle there. The enchanted stag is a powerful symbol in Eurasian steppe cultures, often representing rebirth, renewal, or even a celestial guide, possibly signifying that the brothers had followed the stars to their new homeland. After 5 years in the marshes, the brothers ventured out again and stumbled upon a group of women and children whose men were absent. They carried them off to the marshes, and among them were the 2 daughters of Prince Dula of the Alans. Hunor and Magor each married one of the daughters, and their descendants became the tribes of Hunor and Magor. Over generations, their numbers grew. Simon poetically references the Bible, stating that they multiplied, quote, like the sand, end quote, until the Meotis marshes could no longer sustain them. At this point, they organized under captains and prepared to conquer new lands to the west. By Simon's account, 108 clans had united, and for each they selected 10,000 armed men to march west with, leaving the rest behind to defend their homeland. The greatest of these captains was Attila, the Scourge of God. Simon places this event in 700 AD, yet we know that Attila's historical campaigns occurred in the 440s AD, and his death was recorded in 453 AD. Medieval chroniclers, however, often adjusted dates to align myth with national history, and Simon may have chosen 700 AD to draw a closer connection between Attila's campaigns and the Hungarian conquest of the Carpathian Basin, recorded in 896 AD. From the Meotis marshes, the Huns advanced westward until they reached the Tisa River, from where Attila launched his infamous conquests. Simon then explains Attila's campaigns in great detail, but we are going to skip this and pick up when Attila dies, after which his empire crumbles after a common successor could not be agreed upon. The most significant of these descendants in Simon of Keza's account is Choba, the son of Attila. Simon tells us that Choba fled eastward after the death of his father to the nation of his father, where he sought to rally his kin to retake their lost lands in the west. During this time, Choba sired a son called Edaman, who would later play a key role in the Hungarian conquest of the Pannonian Basin. The conquest of which Simon frames as the, quote, second time the same peoples conquered the Pannonian Basin, implying that the Huns under Attila were the same people as the Magyars later on. The reconquest of Pannonia was led by King Árpád, the founder of the Kingdom of Hungary, whose dynasty would rule for centuries. According to tradition, Árpád united 7 Magyar tribes to carry out the conquest. Among these was the Oba clan, led by Und. Simon explicitly traces Choba's bloodline to the Oba clan, creating a direct link between Attila the Hun and the Hungarian conquest in 896. By doing so, he provides a mythic justification for Hungarian rule, reinforcing the idea that Árpád and his dynasty were rightfully the heirs to the Carpathian Basin, not as newcomers, but as the rightful successors of Attila himself. As we can see, the myth of a Hunnic-Hungarian connection was no coincidence. It was a deliberate attempt to legitimize Hungarian rule in the Middle Ages when Simon of Keza recorded it. This was more than just history. It was a political narrative crafted to solidify the Árpád dynasty's right to rule, by tracing Hungarian origins back to Attila the Hun. One of history's most feared conquerors, Simon provided a mythic foundation for Hungary's sovereignty over the Carpathian Basin. This story served a crucial purpose in a deeply Christian Europe. Though the Hungarian conquest of the Carpathian Basin was a pagan endeavor, Simon and other chroniclers Christianized the narrative, aligning Hungary with the divine order of European kingdoms. By doing so, they ensured Hungary's place within the medieval Christian world, while still emphasizing its warlike, heroic past. Beyond mere historical record, this myth laid the groundwork for Hungarian nationalism. It shaped how medieval Hungary viewed itself, not as a new state, but as a people returning to their rightful homeland, reclaiming what was once theirs. The idea that the Hungarians were not just conquerors, but inheritors of Attila's legacy, would influence Hungarian identity for centuries. Even today, echoes of this myth persist in Hungary's national consciousness, a testament to the power of the history as a tool of legitimacy, identity, and destiny.